Automations are the key to making a smart home smart. Today, I want to show you the top 5 automations that I use in my home to make it smart. So let's jump right into it. Before getting started, let me just point out the fact that I use both Node-RED as an automation tool, as well as the native Home Assistant automation UI. Back in the day, when Home Assistant was very new, I used to have complex automations that were very difficult to do because it was all in YAML. And so I had to code everything. Well, Node-RED made that super simple. And I also like the fact that I can visualize all of the automations that run, and it helps me to easily debug some of those. So I still use Node-RED today, and I also use the very new and improved, or the very improved, Home Assistant automation UI. One of these days, I'll see how many of my Node-RED automations I can put into Home Assistant and see how easy it is to manage them there. But for now, we're still using Node-RED. So let's jump right into our first one. I'm going to talk about my alarm integration. Now, this is not an all-inclusive view of what my alarms systems and automations do. I have scripts and other things that run as well, and that's a whole nother story. Today, we're just going to talk about these automations. So let me go through what is happening here. I have an alarm panel that I use. It's called Alarmo, and you've probably seen a video on that if you've watched my channel. So I have an alarm panel state, and then I take a switch node here, and I take these states, and I send them off to different directions depending on the state of the alarm. This, by the way, is not designed to be an in-depth overview or detail of every automation that I run. It's just a high level of what I do to give you some ideas. Each one of these by themselves could probably take up an entire video. Okay, so let's just go through a few of these here. So if you hover over these, you can see what different states are in. If it's armed home, if it's armed away, armed night, etc. So let's just take a few of these here. Let's just say that my system is armed home. We follow these paths right here. It's going to set a scene controller that I have in my house to red, telling me that the alarm is set up. Now, in my houses now, or in my new house, they didn't pre-wire any alarm systems. They don't do that anymore for some reason. And so I had to come up with a unique way to be able to understand the status of my alarm system. So the scene controllers are the perfect way to do that. I can set up some scene controllers around the house. They're basically light switches. And I use the Zeus brand of scene controller. And there's 5 buttons on them, and each button can be set to a different color light. And so I just set those based on the different statuses, and you'll see that throughout here. So this is where I set it to red, and basically the alarm is set to red, or the scene controller is set to red, regardless of what type of alarm is set. So all the different states where the alarm is active, it sets that light to red. Now, if we go in here, and let me find the next one here. If it's disarmed, a number of things happen. The first thing that happens is it checks to see what time it is. If it's between 7:30, let me just make sure if it's between 7:30 and 10:30 p.m. and the work mode status is off, and I set a work mode when I'm working at home, it sets all the lights and everything. If that status is off, then it turns on the fans. Sometimes I will leave during the day and I will come back. I don't want the fans coming back on until it's time, and I'll explain that here in a little bit. So I just make sure that the work mode is not set to on, because if it is, I don't need all the fans in the house to be running because I'm not in the other parts of the house. I'm in the house office. All right, so I do that. And that's primarily the first step. And then it also sets that scene controller light to green, saying that the alarm system is disarmed. And it turns off the siren. If the siren were to be going off, or the siren were to be in a triggered state, it would turn off the siren. It's basically an AOTech Siren 6 speaker that I use to notify me different statuses of things as well. All right, so that's the disarm. If the alarm goes into pending state, basically that means somebody's opened a door and you have so many seconds to turn off the alarm before it actually triggers. It goes into an entry delay notification on that AOTech siren and tells me, hey, you've got to turn off the alarm or it's going to be tripped, triggered, whatever. So that's what it does there. And then we have another state here where if it's triggered, It turns off the current siren sound if it's that triggered sound or pending sound, and then it goes into a triggered sound. In addition to that, it sets up a function here, and this function will set up an alert that gets sent to pushover and tells me the alarm has been triggered. In addition to that, the same output will go over here and it will trip every single light in the entire house and every single light outside. So if the alarm goes off, the whole place lights up, makes it easy to see if someone's in. There's no corners to hide in or anything like that. So this is one of my most used alarm or automations because it's run multiple times per day based on what's going around, whether we're leaving or coming, or I'm doing work at home and I set the work mode, all of that. So very important automation. It controls my alarm system and my security in my house. Next up, let's talk about the door actions. I have certain things that happen when doors are open, closed, locked, otherwise. So let me just go through those. It looks complicated. It's really not. Some of this stuff can be combined into other more elegant solutions, but this is the way I chose to do it when I was first learning. I just kind of left it that way. And by the way, let me just take a moment and say, this is not the only way to do the things that I'm doing. Pretty much the sky is the limit. Your imagination is whatever you want it to be. You can set these things up however you want to. And I know a lot of people have different ways of doing things. And that's the beauty of this. I'm not buying an off-the-shelf alarm control system or whatever, automation system that says you must set these codes or whatever a certain way. These are the limits you have. You can basically build out however you want it to work based on these automations. So that's a really neat feature of Home Assistant and just automations in general, when you have full control of the automations. All right, let's go through this. The door unlock, and I'm just going to start at the top here because it's easiest. If I get a door unlock code from one of my doors, you have to enter a code on the door lock for this to work. If you enter the proper code, you're going to hit this node here and it's going to look for some specific information, which I'll keep to myself for now. But if it gets the right information, it's going to come up here and it's going to disarm the alarm system. In the holiday season, it's also going to turn on the Christmas tree lights, so the holiday tree lights, because I turn those off when the alarm sets to away mode, so we don't have lights on in the house when we're not here for the Christmas trees or the holiday trees. We don't need those things on. Safety feature I like. And then in addition to that, between sunset and midnight, so basically when the house is darker, it turns on all of these inside lights so that when we walk into the house, it is a nice lit up house. We're not walking into darkness. So that's one of my favorite features about automation. Open the door, unlock the door, the lights come on. You can see what's happening. You don't get surprised by something being in the house that you can't see in the dark. So those are the things that happen with that particular door unlock code. That happens no matter what door it is, as long as it's the proper unlock code. And of course, I get notified through Alarmo whenever the alarm is disarmed. I don't have a notification here because Alarmo takes care of that for me. All right, so garage door, same thing. If you open the garage door properly with the proper code, it's going to do the same thing. It's going to disarm the alarm system. It's going to also turn on the lights based on the time of day. It does a few other things. It turns on, these lights always come on regardless of the time of day. There's a place in the house when you come in from the garage. It's kind of dark all the time because there's no windows around that area. So I want the garage hall light to come on. I want the kitchen pendant lights to come on. And so all of that happens whenever the garage door is open properly. It will set a scene controller to red for the garage door. Again, that scene controller has multiple buttons on it. And if the garage door is open, one of those buttons goes red and tells me that that door is open. So it does that as well. And what else to do here? I think that's it for the garage door. It does send me a notification. It does also come over here between 8 and midnight. It will send out an open or close depending on the status of the door. So my smart speakers will tell me that the garage door is open. So I get a notification if I'm away on my mobile device, watch, whatever. And I also get an audible notification to let somebody in the house know that someone has opened the garage door. So that's nice. I do it between these hours because I don't want to wake people up in the middle of the night or early in the morning when the garage door opens if someone's leaving to go to work or whatever. So if you close the garage door, a lot of things happen as well. It'll set that light to red. It will, let me back up. One other thing here that happens is it turns on the atom matrix and the ultrasonic sensor. I made a video recently on when we park the car in the garage, how far in we need to pull it in. I use an ultrasonic sensor and an atom matrix to display a red or green block of light telling me whether or not I'm far enough in the car. So it turns that on. Also starts a 5-minute timer to turn off the atom matrix. And it does that so that the matrix doesn't run all the time and the sensor isn't running all the time. It kind of saves wear and tear on that device. Only needs to be on when the garage door is first open so that the car is coming into the garage, all of that business. Whenever you close the garage door, it also does an announcement saying it's closed. It turns off the atom matrix, and then it notifies through pushover that the garage is closed. And it also sends the announcement, like I said, and it sends the Zeus sync controller light to green. So those are all of the things that happen with the doors. Again, as I've built out my automations over the years, there's been a little bit of features creep, a little scope creep. Some of the automations run in different areas. I've added some scripts and things, but for the most part, the door automations function all the time, every day. And it's a very handy way to turn things on, off, set notifications, all of that for what status your doors are in. And again, your imagination can make this as wild as you want it to be. All right, next up are our light automations. And these light automations are basically just automations that happen every day based on the time of day to turn things on or off for safety, aesthetics, whatever reasons. They don't get triggered by events around the house. They just are on timers, basically. And I will get to some Home Assistant UI automations here in just a minute. I know I'm spending a lot of time in Node-RED, but this is where a lot of my stuff started, so that's where I'm at. All right, let's talk about what's happening here. So sunset to sunrise and another sunset to sunrise. I have two of these. I'll explain why in just a minute. These force on and off things I just use for testing, which is another reason why I like Node-RED. I can actually push a button here and force this to happen. And it'll send a command to turn all the lights on or off, depending on what I'm doing for testing purposes. All right, so sunset to sunrise, it'll send either on or off through this switch. And depending on what the output is, it will turn these lights on or off. So right now at sunset, it turns on the master lamps, the living room lamp, and the game room lamp. These are all lamps that just come on, like I said, for aesthetics and safety. As the house gets darker, you want the lamps to kind of come on. So those happen. And then from sunset to sunrise, again, it sends it through this switch and it turns on the outside, basically all the outside lights and one of the front study light, where it was in the front of the house where there's more light. And then it also at sunrise turns them off. So you have the two different paths here. You have on and off. Now, the reason I have two of these is because I want different offsets. If you look at the offsets on these, you can set it to start so many minutes before the event. So let's say I want this to turn on 30 minutes before sunset and this to turn on at sunset. I create two different nodes here to set them differently. And the reason why this is 30 minutes beforehand is it gets darker in the house as dusk or whatever approaches. And so I want these on earlier than sunset, but I still want it to be tied into the sunset time that, of course, fluctuates through the year. This sunset to sunrise, outside lights, I only need them to come on at sunset, so I don't set any offset. That's the reason why I have these two here. There's no off path for these over here because they get turned off through other things like arming the alarm, night mode, turn some of these off. There's other methods for turning these lights off later on that don't need an automatic turn off. They're conditional. These are basically turned on all the time for this time of day. And then at midnight, the study light goes off, the living room lamp goes off. Reason why I do that is sometimes we will be in these rooms and we will force it back on after a certain condition happens, and then we'll forget to turn it off. So I want them to go off at midnight. So this all happens every day. So it's a well-used automation. All right, so this next automation is one that I repeat multiple times. It's based loosely on a blueprint. I've modified it a bit in order to make it function for the way I need it. I run a Frigate NVR, which is my camera system. And in order to get messages and alerts to my mobile device, I set up an automation to trigger when certain things happen. And you can see that here. If you look through here in the UI, you can see that the trigger ID is Frigate event. That's just an ID. The topic is using MQTT for triggering. So the topic is Frigate/events, and the payload is driveway new, which means it's a new alert on the driveway. And there's a whole bunch of actions that occur down here. Now, this particular automation is super hard to do in the UI. In fact, there's a lot of areas where it can't work in the UI. So this is one where I still have to go in to do YAML or do code through YAML to do this. It's not overwhelming to do. In fact, as a blueprint, you just change a few things and you reuse the same code over and over again. And that's what I've done here. So let me show you the YAML code on this particular automation. I'll walk you through it. It's not super hard. If you would like the YAML code for this, I can provide that for you. Again, it's based loosely on a template that I found that I had to modify for some specific conditions that I needed because it wasn't working exactly the way I wanted it to. Let's just talk through this real fast. Again, I talked about the trigger being MQTT, and this is the payload and events. But basically, it says you need to wait for the event to finish before you do anything with it, right? So the action is this. This is the important part. This is what the automation does. If it triggers on that Frigate event, it's going to check and see if it's within the cooldown period. And you can see down here that the cooldown period is 90 seconds. All that does is prevent this from firing over and over and over again while somebody's walking around in this area where this camera can see them. I don't need 1,000 alerts in 20 seconds. I need an alert telling me that something happened. And if 90 seconds, again, they're still there, I would like to know that. So it'll do that. And then what it does is it checks to see that the zone I'm interested in is where this is happening. So I have specified this one single zone, the whole area of the driveway. If you want a more specific area, you can create those zones in Frigate and specify them here as well. If you have multiple zones, you can still do that as well. So it's basically looking to make sure that it's in one of those zones. And if so, what it's going to do is it's going to notify my mobile app, let me know there's a person in the driveway by message, a driveway alert, and then it's going to send me a thumbnail of the thing that triggered the alert, the person, the dog, the cat, the car, whatever's in there. And it's also going to send me a URL to click on, this is an actionable alert. It will send me the URL. I can click on that, and it will then allow me to play the little video clip that's associated with this alert. I also have a thing called Has Agent running on my desktop PC. And so I get the same thumbnail. I don't get a clickable event. I don't need that. But I do want to see the thumbnail that pops up in the little window on in Windows that shows you when you have alerts. It'll show me the picture that triggered that alert as well. If you're interested in the Has Agent, I have a video on that, so you can look through that. And then these are the variables we just talked about. Cooldown period is 90 seconds. Zones are the zones you want this alert to happen from. And then what I did to modify this is in order to access the action URL, I had to specify a specific URL. I've got Cloudflare tunnels set up so that I have to authenticate to view the clip. And then I also use my Nabu Casa URL to get the actual notification and stuff. And this is all because I don't want to open ports up specifically to my cameras. I close those down and then I'm able to access these things remotely. This in itself is a whole nother video topic, a whole nother discussion. So I do this on all of my cameras, and then I have the ability on my dashboards to be able to turn those on or off at will. If the kids are playing outside, I don't need 100 alerts coming in telling me someone's on the back porch or someone's in the driveway or playing around. So through automation, I can turn all of those off, or through the dashboard, I can turn all those automations off. And that's one of the beauties of doing this through the UI. in Home Assistant is you can reference those in a dashboard or whatever in order to turn those things on and off. So that's the Frigate alerts that I get, both an image and a little video clip I can watch for those cameras whenever they alert. Now, I've shown you a bunch of complicated type automations. There are simple automations that I use on a regular basis as well. This happens to be one of them. This is a lightning counter. And what it's doing is looking at a lightning sensor. I use the Blitzertongue lightning sensor. And that's an integration Home Assistant. I actually think I made a video on that too, if you want to search around for that. And if I hit a certain number of lightning strikes, I want a notification to my phone. And this one you can do in the UI. Basically what I've done is when the lightning counter is above 3 and the entity is lightning counter, that's the Blitzertongue thing. So you can choose a lightning counter. When it goes above 3, I want to be alerted on my mobile device. And I do this through pushover. And I use a custom sound called thunder. It sounds like a big thunderclap on my phone. It tells me that there's lightning in the area. I do that to let me know, oh, hey, I wasn't aware that there was a storm coming, or there might be a storm coming. There's a little bit of lightning around somewhere. And you can set under the Blitzertongue configuration, you can set some parameters. For example, I set it to lightning strikes within 15 miles in a 30-minute period. If I get that number of strikes in that period of time and that distance, then I get an alert. So that tells me that there's something going on. The YAML for this is also very simple. This is probably one of the most simple automations that I have, and it tells me that. Now, I also have another one called Lightning Alert High Strike Count. The difference being that if it's above 251, it does the same thing, and then it tells me something else. What does it say here? It tells me lightning, I just changed the message, lightning greater than 250 strikes in 15 minutes. No, in 15 miles within 30 minutes. That tells me there's probably some severe weather coming and I should pay attention. So I have two different ways to get notified through the same automation. Same thing, looks about the same. It's very simple to do. And those are the fun ones. Those are the easy ones to set up. Simple, solves a problem, creates some sort of informational thing that I can act upon if needed. All right, that was my top 5 automations that I use all the time, every day, pretty much. The lightning one happens when it rains, and that's been few and far between lately, although it did happen last night. So we got a little bit of rain. Yay. I'm in Texas. We're drying out. We're pretty much dried out. Anyway, I have one more that I want to mention, though. I call this the honorable mention. It's a super important automation. It keeps the family happy. This is what I call the WAF automation. So I talked a little bit about work mode. I set a work mode setting at the beginning of my workday, and it sets the thermostat up to about 78 degrees Fahrenheit. And it does that so that it, saves energy. I don't need the cool temperatures in the house as cool as they like to keep them. And so with that, I want to make sure that the house is cooled down before the family gets home, because they want to walk into a nice, cool house. So this is how the automation works. At 2:30 in the afternoon, 2:30 p.m., first thing I do is check the outside temperature through a service call. I have a weather station outside. If it's greater or equal to 98 degrees, I go ahead and process this. The reason why is I know through my Ecobee thermostat, and I use a site called BStat. It gives you information on how efficient your house is, how long it takes to cool, how long it takes to heat, that kind of thing. And I know that if it's above 98 degrees, it's not going to cool down fast enough before the family gets home. So if it does that, I go ahead and process this whole string of, or this whole flow. One other thing I check is the vacation status. I have a helper that sets my vacation status. I don't want the thermostat kicking on to cool the house at a lower temperature if we're on vacation. So if it's in vacation status, the whole thing stops right here. Let's assume it's not, vacation status is off. Well, then it's going to run through the rest of these things here. And it's going to check my work mode status. If the work mode status is on, I want it to go ahead and turn that off. And the status is just a helper flag I set in the helper section of Home Assistant. I want it off so that nothing else related to the work mode gets stopped because it's on. So it turns that off, and then it turns on the fans. The family likes to have the ceiling fans running when they're home. They like the feeling of the moving air or whatever. So I turn those off in work mode, turn them back on before they get home. So that happens. In addition, it goes and sets the Ecobee, or runs a script that sets the Ecobee mode to home, which then lowers the temperature set point and allows the house to start cooling. And then finally, it goes through and it sets a pushover notification to me saying that it ran this whole thing. Tells me that the eco mode is now set to home. Now, that's with a 98-degree temperature or above. If it's less than that, it doesn't take as long to cool the house down. The air conditioning can keep up with it relatively easily. So I start a 30-minute counter. And after that 30-minute counter expires, it puts it basically at 3 o'clock instead of 2:30. It will then run this whole same thing. Now, I've got a couple of different paths here. One of them is all of this up here. The other one is the alarm panel. Now, if the work mode status is not on, let's say it's a weekend or a non-work day, I still want this to function. And if I don't run this other path here, then it will not function. Now, looking at this, I probably should take the path and actually run it from here to this one. So this would be the opposite way. So that way it's not running twice. In fact, I'm going to do that now live on this recording, and I will deploy that. And what it does basically is if the work mode status is on, which says this state is true, then it will function and go through here and call that script. If it is off, meaning I haven't set the fans to off through work mode, I haven't done anything else, the fans are set in a state they are in for other reasons, I want it just to go through and set everything on. So it will come through this path here, check the state of the alarm panel, and then set the system to home. The reason I check the state of the alarm panel is if we're on vacation or whatnot, the alarm should be armed. I'm basically checking to make sure the alarm system is armed before running this. It'll take me some thought process to make sure this is correct now that I've changed it, because I want to make sure this runs regardless of whatever. Typically, the alarm status is on when I'm in work mode and off otherwise, so it'll still run. But the point is, it goes through and checks all these things and sets the Ecobee to a cooler temperature, and it sets the fans to on so that they come home to a nice cool house. All right, that is the top 5 plus 1 honorable mention of the automations that I use on a daily basis. It is by no means the only automations that run and make my house smarter, but they are automations that run all the time, pretty much every day, and they're responsible for some of the most visible parts of what my automations do. I hope it was helpful. I hope it gives you some ideas on how maybe you can automate things. Let me know if you have any questions down in the comments below. And, do the whole subscriber thing if you're not subscribing. I know a lot of you watch my videos and you're not subscribed. Just take a second, push that little button down there. For those of you that support me through memberships, either on YouTube or other areas, I really appreciate that. I appreciate the interactions on Discord and whatnot. Anyway, thanks for watching this video. Stay tuned for more videos in the future, and we will see you on the next one.